Forget everything you think you know about maritime security, global trade vulnerability, and the military geography of the Red Sea. What has occurred in the southern approaches to the Suez Canal represents the most significant disruption to global maritime commerce since the closure of the canal during the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, and it has been accomplished not through the dramatic seizure of a strategic waterway, but through a weapon as old as naval warfare itself. 1,200 Iranian mines deployed in a pattern that demonstrates operational planning of extraordinary sophistication have effectively sealed the Red Sea passage to commercial shipping, and the global trade paralysis that is resulting is not a crisis that will be resolved in days or weeks. We are looking at a timeline measured in months, and the economic consequences of what has been done will alter the structure of global supply chains in ways that are only beginning to be understood. Let me be clear about something that the shipping industry's communications apparatus, the governments of the GCC states, and the U.S. Treasury Department are desperately hoping you will not understand in its full scope. A maritime mine is the cheapest per-unit weapon system in any military inventory. An Iranian EM-52 rocket-propelled mine costs approximately $12,000 to $18,000 per unit at assessed manufacturing cost. The economic damage inflicted by a single mine that successfully strikes a very large crude carrier can reach $100 million before accounting for the cargo value. The ratio of weapon cost to economic damage is approximately 1 to 6,000 at minimum. No other weapon system in the history of warfare has achieved an economic leverage ratio of this magnitude, and Iran has just deployed 1,200 of them with operational precision that I frankly did not expect to see from the Iranian Navy's Mine Warfare Division in this time frame. Stay with me through the technical architecture of the mine deployment because the operational intelligence required to deploy 1,200 mines in a pattern that maximizes both immediate disruption and long-term clearance difficulty is not a trivial military achievement, and understanding it is the only way to comprehend why this problem does not have a rapid solution. The Red Sea narrows significantly in its southern approaches, from a maximum width of approximately 355 kilometers in the northern sector to approximately 29 kilometers at the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The navigable commercial shipping lanes through the southern Red Sea are further constrained by the presence of coral reef systems, coastal shoals, and the restricted approaches to the Yemeni and Djiboutian ports. Commercial very large crude carriers with drafts of up to 23 meters are constrained to specific deep water channels that provide the necessary depth clearance for safe transit. These deep water channels, which represent the only practical routing for large commercial vessels, constitute a choke geometry that a mine warfare planner can exploit with considerably fewer assets than would be required to mine open ocean areas. Iranian mine warfare doctrine, which has been studied extensively by U.S. Navy minesweeping planners since the tanker war of the 1980s, organizes mine deployments into 3 defensive belts designed to create overlapping threat environments that complicate minesweeping operations while maximizing commercial disruption. The outer belt consists of influence mines, typically EM-52 or SADAF-02 variants, set to detonate on magnetic, acoustic, or pressure signatures consistent with large commercial vessel transits. The middle belt deploys a combination of contact mines and influence mines at varying depths, creating a 3-dimensional threat environment that requires different minesweeping techniques for different depth bands. The inner belt, positioned in the shallow approaches to the Bab el-Mandeb and the southern access channels, combines moored contact mines, bottom mines, and what Iranian doctrine designates as smart mines, influence mines with programmable counters that allow a set number of vessels to pass before activating, creating uncertainty about which transit attempts are safe even after initial minesweeping efforts. Before we go any further, I need you to understand what 1,200 mines deployed across these 3 belts means for the timeline and resource requirements of minesweeping operations, because the clearance problem is where the medium-term economic paralysis is locked in. The United States Navy's mine countermeasures capability consists of the Avenger-class mine countermeasures ships, of which 11 remain in active service, and the MH-53EC Dragon helicopter, the primary airborne mine countermeasures platform for sweeping shallower water areas. The Avenger class, at a transit speed of 10 knots, can sweep a lane width of approximately 100 meters using its SQQ-32 variable depth sonar system and AN/SLQ-48 mine neutralization vehicle. Against a minefield of 1,200 weapons deployed across the three-belt pattern I described, encompassing an area of approximately 600 square kilometers of navigable channel in the southern Red Sea approaches, a complete sweep using the available U.S. Navy MCM force would require between 8 and 14 months of continuous operations under favorable sea state conditions, with significant probability of mine strike casualties to mine-sweeping vessels during the clearance process. That is not a tactical problem. That is a strategic timeline. 14 months of constrained access to the Red Sea Passage, through which approximately 12% of global merchandise trade and 8% of global liquefied natural gas trade transits annually, is an economic disruption of civilizational proportions. What I have not yet told you is what Iran has done to complicate the mine-sweeping problem beyond simply deploying large numbers of mines, because the operational sophistication of this deployment extends to the characteristics of the individual weapons in ways that will make clearance operations significantly more dangerous and time-consuming than the aggregate number alone suggests. The SADAF-02, Iran's most capable bottom influence mine, incorporates a two-channel influence fuse that requires both magnetic and acoustic signatures to match defined parameters before activating. This dual-channel design means that mine-sweeping systems that generate only magnetic or only acoustic signatures to neutralize mines will not reliably trigger the SADAF-02's fuse. Both signature types must be generated simultaneously at the appropriate magnitude and frequency to reliably neutralize the weapon. Generating both signatures simultaneously in the correct parameters requires specialized combination sweep equipment that only a small number of the world's MCM forces operate. Additionally, the SADAF-02 incorporates an arming delay of between 7 and 30 days, programmable before deployment. This means that mines deployed in the initial operation may not arm immediately, creating a situation in which early minesweeping operations appear to clear sections of the threat area, when in fact undetonated mines are simply waiting for their arming delay to expire. Ships transiting behind an apparently cleared minesweeping force may do so through a lane that contains armed mines whose delay period expires after the minesweeper has passed. Let me walk you through exactly why the economic consequences of what has been deployed are not linear but cascading, because the direct disruption to Red Sea shipping is only the first layer of a consequence structure that reaches into every sector of the global economy. The most immediate consequence is the energy market impact. The Red Sea route carries crude oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and the UAE to European markets, and refined products in both directions. Rerouting this traffic around the Cape of Good Hope adds approximately 11 days of transit time for very large crude carriers on the typical Gulf to Europe routing. At a bunker fuel consumption rate of 95 tons per day for a VLCC, an additional 11 days of transit adds approximately $1 million per voyage in fuel costs alone, before accounting for time charter rate increases driven by the extended voyage duration. Across the volume of crude oil normally routed through the Red Sea, the aggregate cost increase is measurable in billions of dollars per month. The second consequence layer is the container shipping disruption. Consumer goods, electronics, agricultural products, and manufactured components that normally transit the Red Sea from Asian manufacturing centers to European markets face the same rerouting calculus as energy shipments. Major carriers have already announced schedule adjustments that will add 10 to 14 days to typical Asia-Europe transit times and will introduce port congestion at Cape Route alternative hubs in South Africa that are not equipped to handle the transit volume diverted from the Suez route. What the mainstream media will not tell you is that the insurance dimension of this crisis may prove more economically damaging than the direct shipping disruption. War risk insurance premiums for vessels transiting the Red Sea corridor have been increasing for 18 months due to the Houthi missile threat. With 1,200 mines now deployed, the war risk insurance market for Red Sea transits has not simply increased premiums. Multiple major underwriters have suspended coverage for Red Sea transits entirely pending assessment of the mine threat extent and clearance timeline. Without available insurance, commercial operators cannot transit the area regardless of their physical ability to do so. The mine deployment has effectively closed the Red Sea to insured commercial shipping even before a single vessel strikes a mine. You think you have heard the worst of it. You have not. The food security dimension is where the humanitarian catastrophe lurks beneath the economic story. The Red Sea corridor carries a significant proportion of the grain, cooking oil, and humanitarian food aid destined for East Africa and the Horn of Africa, regions that are already experiencing food security stress from a combination of climate disruption, conflict, and economic pressures. Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea, and Djibouti all depend substantially on Red Sea shipping for food import volumes that cannot be sourced domestically. A disruption measured in months does not simply increase food prices in these regions. It reduces the physical availability of imported calories at a moment when domestic food production is already insufficient to meet population needs. The people of these nations deserve better than to be collateral damage in a geopolitical confrontation they have no part in. I need you to understand what this means for human beings living at the intersection of a strategic choke point and a food security crisis. The decisions being made right now in Washington, in Riyadh, in Tehran, and in the maritime insurance capitals of London and New York will determine whether the international community can mobilize the MCM resources and diplomatic frameworks necessary to begin clearing the threat before the cascade consequences reach their most damaging expression. I am not offering predictions with certainty. I am obligated to tell you the truth as I see it. The window within which rapid clearance is achievable before supply chain and food security effects become irreversible is measured in weeks, not months. By the time you watch this, that window may have already narrowed further. Keep watching. The Red Sea is not just a shipping lane. It is the circulatory system of global trade, and it is bleeding.